Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Or if you're new here, please subscribe for all the latest and greatest Star Trek Picard news and other great sci-fi TV shows. So today we're talking about episode 5 of Star Trek Picard, Stardust City Rag. We got to see this casino gambling planet in the form of Free Cloud. We got a complete story this time, which was all about Picard and his crew, and we didn't even go and have a look at what's going on the Borg cube. Thank God for that, because that story is kind of a bit stalled a little bit. We got some unexpected graphic, gory violence, and we also got to see 7 of 9 back again. Jeri Ryan, great performance there. So let's take a look at the episode and see what it had to offer. So as always, the episodes start with a flashback, and this episode was no exception. We started on the planet Vergessen, where we see some rather graphic experiments going on former Borg. We've got a Starfleet lieutenant getting his eyeball removed from its socket quite graphically. This scene I found a little bit disturbing for the tone of Star Trek. It's not what I expected. This is quite unnecessarily graphic, I think. I'm generally not squeamish when it comes to, watching movies that are, of a higher rating because of violence and so forth. But when you're watching Star Trek, you kind of expect things are going to sit at a sort of a certain level in terms of their tone when it comes to violence. And I think seeing someone's eye ripped out of their socket without really cutting away or implying what's going on, I think there's plenty of cinematic techniques you can utilise in terms of cutting away at the right moment, showing camera angles from a reverse angle or maybe a silhouette or a shadow on the wall when these things are going on. I think there's plenty of things you can do from a filmmaking perspective to imply the violence, but we don't need to see eyeballs being ripped out in every graphic, gory detail. That's just not Star Trek. This episode was directed by Jonathan Frakes. I honestly would have thought Frakes might have kind of toned it down or played it down a little bit, implied the violence rather than show it in all its glory. I just think that was pushing it a little bit too far. And here's when we find out in this episode that this poor soul getting his eyeball ripped out is in fact Icheb. 7 comes rushing in to save him, but it's a bit too late, and it would appear like she hasn't been quite in time to save poor Icheb's life from getting terminally ripped apart on the operating table. So it seems our actor who's playing Icheb at the start of this episode isn't Manu Itriami, it's Casey King. So they've recast the role with a different actor in this instance. But still really nice to see Icheb and 7 of 9 here in this scene as graphic as it was. It seemed a little bit excessive to me that 7 euthanized him with a phaser in this scene. Surely a removal of an eye wouldn't have been a terminal illness. He could have just got eye like Geordie's, but maybe his other injuries were too extensive. We then go to Free Cloud, where we see Bruce Maddox sitting in a little bar nightclub here, and it would appear that our actor Brophy, who played Maddox in the original episode Measure of a Man, hasn't come back to reprise his role, and we have a different actor playing the role of Bruce Maddox in this episode. We get to meet our antagonist of this episode in the form of Vajazel. I actually was like double taking at the beginning of this episode because I thought this was Deanna Troi. This actress looks like incredibly similar to Marina Sirtis. Hang on a sec, is this Marina Sirtis or is this somebody else? But that wasn't the case. Maddox has made some bad dealings with the Tal Shiar, and they're after him. They've destroyed his lab, and we end the pre-title sequence with him falling in a heap on the bar, being poisoned. We then go to a scene back on the La Serena with Picard and 7 of 9. And I must say, it's great to see Jeri Ryan back in action as 7 of 9 once more. She hasn't lost it, and she still looks fantastic. They have a little bit of a talk about what Picard's doing in this area of space and what 7's doing with the Fenris Rangers, acting like a sort of a bit of a mercenary for hire to help people who are in trouble. And there's kind of a little bit of banter between these two. It's nice to see. This is a nice little scene. And it's very welcome to see Jeri Ryan back in her iconic role again. Now, after Raffi and Rios have a bit of a chat on the bridge of the ship about the fact that they've got 2 ex-Borgs on board and get a little bit of history and chit-chat back and forth about 7 of 9 being notorious in the sector as a Fenris Ranger and so forth, we go to Jurati watching an old home video of her doing some baking in the kitchen with Dr. Maddox. And it's here we learn that Maddox and Jurati were involved in a romantic relationship together. And Jurati's having a bit of a teary. She misses him, obviously. There are certainly feelings there. Now our crew docks at Freecloud and they start getting all of these advertisements thrown at them from down on the planet. The first one being a Red Bolian, which is like an engineering fella who wants to service Rios's ship. And it's here we find out that Rios's ship is a Kaplan F-17 speed freighter. Kaplan is not a race. I think it's a reference to a name. There have been a few Kaplans in Starfleet and in past episodes. I thought in a previous video I did last week that they were saying Capellan, which was a race from the original series, but it seems now that this is a Kaplan F-17 speed freighter. So it'd be nice to know some more information about the last Serena, but this is all we know at this stage. Maybe we'll find out some more information in episodes to come. So they locate Maddox on the planet, but they find out he's being held by Bjayzl. And Bjayzl's trying to find a buyer to sell Maddox off to the Tal Shiar, who are no doubt trying to hunt him down. And here we find out a bit more information about Bjayzl. She basically finds ex-Borg, butchers the hell out of them, ripping eyes out of their sockets and God knows whatever else she's doing to extract their Borg bits and then sell them off to the highest bidder. So she's kind of a black market Borg parts salesperson. And 7 of 9 doesn't seem to be particularly happy about hearing about her, since her organisation was the one that no doubt killed or was responsible for killing Icheb at the beginning of the episode. Here's where we find out the plan, which is to exchange 7 of 9 for Bruce Maddox. So they're planning on doing a bit of a prisoner exchange here to get Bruce Maddox back. So 7 of 9 is going to bait the trap. So Rios beams down to Freecloud in his pimp outfit after all these guys getting dressed up in weird garb to look flamboyant and blend in, I suppose. One thing that surprised me about Freecloud is here is a place that's meant to be kind of a galactic mecca for dodgy dealings and money changing hands and a bit of a casino. And I didn't see one Ferengi in this whole establishment. So there's a little bit of a missed opportunity, I think. I think it would have been nice to see at least a couple of Ferengi walking through this place, you know, just to sell it as kind of an establishment where there's, you know, money deals going on and so forth. Because let's face it, you know, that's just totally a Ferengi neighbourhood. I think without Ferengi, this environment looks far more like a Star Wars world than a Star Trek world, much like Canto Bight or Mos Eisley Cantina or something from Attack of the Clones back on Coruscant. And here in the establishment, as Rios talks to Mr. Vup about his references and so forth, we hear a name dropped that we have heard before, in the form of Quark from DS9. And Mr. Vup says that Mr. Quark of Ferengina was especially satisfied with the way Mr. Rios dealt with the situation that he had some trouble with the Breen. So there's a nice little name drop there where we get to hear that Quark is obviously still around somewhere and he's probably getting some dodgy dealings with the Breen. So Raffi's obviously set up a nice little backstory here for Rios in his bio. That is ticking all the boxes for Mr. Vup. So our crew are down on the planet and they're doing the deal to swap 7 of 9 for Maddox, and Picard is putting on a very cartoonish French accent, trying to play the stereotypical moustache-twirling bad guy. So he's pulling out a few old holodeck tricks, I suppose, back in the day when they used to get and play dress-ups on board the holodeck. I was worried that this scene was going to be just an absolute joke, but I kind of didn't mind it. It was humorous, and there's moments of levity in this show that I think are working really nicely. I think once you kind of get over seeing a Picard doing a very outrageous French accent, once you get past that, it's okay. I didn't mind it. Meanwhile, Raffi's gone down to the planet to see her son with the hopes of reconciliation. He's working in the Stardust City Medical District, and Raffi hasn't seen him for a while. Obviously, she had some issues with her drug dependence and so forth, and there was a bit of a rift between her and her son, who is now married to a Romulan girl, and she's pregnant with their child. So Raffi was kind of hoping for some sort of reconciliation there, but it seems like there's perhaps just a bit too much water under the bridge. Her son isn't all that keen to see his mum again. So in Raffi's conversation with her son, we hear a little bit about the information that perhaps drove Raffi a little bit mad and was partly responsible for the dissolving of her relationship with her son. And one of the things he mentions in this conversation was the Conclave of Eight. And this sounds like a very secret organisation, perhaps some sort of cabal, maybe that had some sort of conspiracy thing to do with the whole synth attack on Mars, perhaps. We're getting little hints dropped here, so I wonder what the Conclave of Eight is. And we get a little bit of information dropped about the fact that the synth attack on Mars was perhaps a big conspiracy and the synths weren't responsible at all, and maybe somehow this Conclave of Eight had something to do with it. So it would seem there's some significant bad blood here between Bjayzl and Seven of Nine. Obviously, Bjayzl was responsible for carving up Icheb, and Seven isn't too happy about that, and she's out for blood. So Picard feels a bit ripped off because Seven's kind of played him a little bit. She used him to get close to Bjayzl so that she could kill her for the death of Icheb. So it's here that Seven gives Picard a bit of backstory about what happened with Icheb. Seven says there was a young science officer on board the USS Coleman. Okay, yes, that makes complete sense that Icheb was a science officer. When Icheb was on Voyager, he was very, very astute when it came to scientific things and engineering things, so it makes sense that he would become a science officer. Although it's confusing as to why he was wearing a red uniform in the scene where he was getting his eye plucked out. Surely, if he was a science officer, he should have been wearing blue or yellow. Red is command, so I think someone might have got his uniform colour incorrect for the start of the episode, just to be a nitpicker. So back up on the ship, Bruce Maddox is in pretty average shape. He's got to get to sickbay pretty quickly because he's not doing too good. So Seven is going to be on her way, and there's a really nice little exchange between her and Picard in this scene where they kind of talk about being previously assimilated and whether they've regained their humanity. And they say that they're never really 100% have regained their humanity from their experiences being assimilated. And it's a nice little touching scene between these two where they exchange emotions and feelings, having gone through a similar past experience before. As Seven steps on board the transporter pad, the Voyager theme swells, and I gotta say, there's nothing quite like the musical connection to the other show, and also to Next Generation and other series as well. When you hear that theme swell in these emotional moments, it really hits you in the heartstrings. And I think Jeff Russo has really done a great job of the score for this show, bringing in our themes from previous shows right at the right times, just to kind of hit you in the heart, and it just brings back that nostalgia. I love it. But before Seven gets picked up by the Fenris Rangers, she's got one more score to settle, where she goes back down to the planet and she blasts the hell out of Bjayzl and all of her henchmen and so forth, taking the place apart, as we've seen in the many previous trailers. So back up on the ship, Picard is talking to Maddox in the sickbay, and he's got some pretty serious internal injuries. The ship's medical computer is working to sort them out. So here Maddox gives us a bit of information about Dahj's activation, where this mum AI that she's been talking to on the communication system, it would appear that if threatened, it seems the mum AI gives like a code word, which basically what activated Dahj. So now we find out from Maddox that the whole reason that Dahj and Soji was sent to Earth and the Borg cube is to find out what's going on with this conspiracy about the ban on synthetics. So something is going down, perhaps at the high echelons of Starfleet, and along with something that's going down in this Borg cube that holds the secret to why all the synths were banned, perhaps why the synths activated many years ago and wiped out the Romulan fleet and so forth on Utopia Planitia. Something very sinister is going on, and Dahj and Soji are put in place to find out what that is. Maddox says there are lies upon lies and they're hiding something, whether that be the Federation or whether that be the Romulans, but something pretty sinister and pretty covert is going on here. Meanwhile, in the background, Dr. Jurati is listening in, and she doesn't kind of seem too surprised by this information. In fact, there's maybe a hint of she kind of knows a bit more than what she's been letting on, and that she's maybe even somehow involved, perhaps. And Maddox confirms that it's not just the Romulans and the Tal Shiar or the Zhat Vash that are involved. Maddox says that the Federation are involved in this shit as well. So this conspiracy seems to be on multiple fronts here, which is pretty troubling. And Maddox talks a little bit about how Dahj and Soji are perfectly imperfect. He did it, and Sung did it, and Jurati did it, and that her contribution was essential. I wonder maybe if this means a bit more than just her scientific expertise. Maybe she donated some biological material to their construction. We know that Dahj and Soji are flesh and blood androids, but it seems like he was implying something that was just a little bit more than just her being part of the team and adding her scientific expertise to the project. And as Jurati switches off Maddox's life support, she says to him, "I wish you knew what I know." So it does sound like that Jurati is in this a bit deeper than we thought she was. And she says, I wish I didn't know what I know. But whatever that is, she's switching off his life support and murdering the dude. So it would seem like somebody at the Federation has shown Jurati something quite disturbing. There was a shot in a trailer a while back which had what looked like Commodore O mind melding with Jurati outside the Okinawa Daystrom Institute. I wonder whether Jurati is somehow involved in all this, or whether she is being manipulated with some sort of suggested mind meld type implant which Commodore O has put into her head to be a kind of a double agent here. So it looks like our crew are off to Romulan space. We find out that Raffi is back on board the ship. She wasn't able to stay with her son like she hoped. There's just too much of a rift there. And Raffi is back on board with our crew. So Picard is kind of happy about that. So it was good to see the history of a couple of ex-Star Trek characters come back in this episode in the form of Icheb and in the form of Dr. Bruce Maddox. Neither actor was played by the original cast members who performed these roles, which is kind of a bit of a shame. Great to see 7 of 9 back, so hopefully she pops up again before the season is out. So I enjoyed this episode. What do you guys think? Did you guys like it? What did you think of Picard's strange French accent? Did you guys like it? Leave a comment in the comment section. Please like, subscribe, and share this video with all your friends, and I will see you guys next time for my next review.